Hi everyone, my name is Leah. I'm your lead course instructor here at Advanced E-Clinical Training, and I want to welcome you to our last installment of the Anatomy and Physiology series. Our lesson today is going to be the integumentary system. All right. So the integumentary system, some functions include protection. So the skin protects deeper tissues from mechanical damage, chemical damage, ultraviolet radiation, as well as bacteria and also thermal or heat damage. Also, the integumentary system helps with temperature regulation. So our skin helps with heat loss or heat retention and is controlled by the central nervous system. Also, the integumentary system helps with elimination. So the skin helps in secretion of urea and uric acid through perspiration produced by the sweat glands. Also, this system acts as a synthesizer. So what that means is our skin helps to synthesize vitamin D through modified cholesterol molecules in the skin by the sunlight. And then, of course, sensation. The integumentary system has sensory receptors that can recognize heat, cold, touch, pressure, and pain. The integumentary system includes, of course, our skin, our hair, our fingernails, our toenails, the sebaceous glands, and our sweat glands. So we'll start talking about the skin, structures of the skin. Now the skin is composed of two kinds of tissue, the outer epidermis and then the underlying dermis. So you can see here in this picture that the epidermis is the outer part of the skin, and it's comprised mostly of squamous epithelium cells, and that's capable of keratinizing or becoming hard and tough. Then underneath the epidermis, we have the dermis, and this underlying dermis mostly consists of dense connective tissue. Then underneath the dermis, we have the subcutaneous tissue, which is mostly fat. So let's start talking a little bit about the dermis. So the dermis includes a papillary layer, and this is the layer that's directly underneath the epidermis. So this layer contains endings of capillaries, lymph vessels, and sensory neurons. It has a loose network of connective tissue that helps to provide nutrients to the skin and also helps with sensory perception and temperature regulation. Next, we have the reticular layer, and this is the deepest skin layer. It contains blood vessels, sweat and oil glands, and deep pressure receptors. Next, we have the collagen. So collagen fibers are responsible for the toughness of the dermis. They also attract and bind to water, helping to keep our skin hydrated. Then we have the elastic fibers. Elastic fibers does, of course, exactly what it sounds like it does. It gives our skin its elasticity when we are young, and unfortunately, as we age, the number of the collagen in elastic fibers decreases. Also, the subcutaneous tissue loses fat. Of course, there are blood vessels that are part of the dermis and that help to supply and keep the dermis alive. It helps also to maintain body temperature. And then, of course, there is the nerve supply. So the dermis has a rich nerve supply. Many of those nerve endings have specialized receptors that can help send messages back to the central nervous system when they are stimulated by environmental factors. So here we have the epidermis. In the epidermis, we have epithelial tissue, and the epidermis is avascular. So what that means is it has no blood supply of its own. Next, you have the keratinocytes. Most of the cells in the epidermis are these keratinocytes, which produce keratin. It's a fibrous protein that help make the epidermis very tough for its protective layer. So that's important. You have the stratum basale, and that's the deepest layer of the epidermis, and it lies closest to the dermis. It has epidermal cells that receive nutrients from the dermis. Next, we have the stratum spinosum, and this is the layer of the epidermis found between the granulosum and the basale, and this layer is composed of polyhydrokeratinocytes that join together with dermis, the desmosomes. And then next, underneath there, you have the stratum granulosum, and this layer becomes flatter and increasingly full of keratin. And last but not least, then you have the lucidum, and the lucidum is found in the palms of our hands and the soles of our feet, where the skin is hairless and thick. Continuing on with the epidermis, you have the stratum corneum, and this is the outermost layer. It's very thick, and it accounts for about 3/4 of the epidermal thickness. There's cornified cells, and the shingle-like dead cells filled with keratin are known as cornified cells. Of course, we have the keratin, and this is a strong protein found in the stratum corneum, allowing it to protect the deeper cells from the hostile external environment. We have melanin, and melanin is a pigment that ranges in color from yellow to brown to black, and it is produced by cells called the melanocytes, found chiefly in the stratum basale. Next, we have the melanosomes, and as the melanocytes produce melanin, it accumulates melanosomes, which are granules that move to the melanocytes, where they are taken up by the nearby keratinocytes. Next, in the integumentary system, we have hair and hair follicles, because our hair is part of this integumentary system. So we all know what hair is. It's produced by our hair follicle, and it is a flexible epithelial structure. We have the root. So the root is the part of the hair enclosed in the follicle. We have the shaft. So the hair shaft projects from the surface of the scalp or the skin. And then we have the formation. So hair is formed by a division of the stratum basale epithelium cells in the matrix of the hair bulb at the inferior end of the follicle. The composition. So each hair is made up of a central core known as the medulla, surrounded by the cortex layer. And then we have the cuticle. So the cuticle is the most heavily keratinized area, providing strength and helps keep the inner hair layers tightly connected. Continuing on with our hair and hair follicles. So hair pigment is created by melanocytes in the hair bulb that helps to produce hair color from pale blonde to pitch black. Our hair follicles are compound structures. The epidermal sheath, so the inner epidermal sheath is composed of epithelial tissue and forms the hair. We have the dermal sheath, so the outer dermal sheath is dermal connective tissue. And this dermal region helps to supply blood to the epidermis. And then there's the papilla, which helps to provide the blood supply to the matrix of the hair bulb. Moving on to our nails. So here, nail folds are the borders of the nail that are overlapped by skin folds. We have the cuticle. The cuticle is that thick proximal nail fold that is known as the cuticle. We have the nail bed. The nail bed is actually the stratum basale of the epidermis extending beneath the nail. The nail matrix is responsible for the nail growth. And our nails are transparent and colorless, but they look pink because of the rich supply of blood. And the lanula, and this, the exception to the pinkish color of the nails is the region over the thickened nail matrix that appears as white, or like a white crescent. So moving on to the cutaneous glands of the integumentary system. So cutaneous glands, eccrine glands, they're all eccrine glands and release their secretions to the skin surface through ducts and fall into two groups, the sebaceous glands and the sweat glands. So sebaceous glands or oil glands are found all over the skin except on the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. The sebaceous glands produce sebum, and that's a mixture of oily substances and fragmented cells, and it helps to lubricate and keep the skin soft and moist. It also helps to prevent hair from becoming brittle. Next, we have our sweat glands, and the sweat glands are widely distributed in the skin, and there are two types of sweat glands. We have the eccrine glands, and these types of sweat glands are more numerous and found all over the body. They produce sweat, in which mostly water, salts, vitamin C, metabolic waste, and lactic acid. These type of sweat glands also help with the body's heat regulating system. And the last of the two sweat glands, we have the apocrine glands, and these glands are confined to the axillary and the genital areas of the body, and they were a little bit larger than the eccrine glands. Their secretions contain fatty acids and proteins, and they begin to function during puberty under the influence of androgens. So this lesson here, the integumentary system, was very short and sweet, not nearly as detailed as the others, so that's why I left it for last. But of course, you all know if you have any questions or concerns, or if you need me to clarify anything with you, you can always email me, and I will get back to you just as soon as I can. Thanks so much. We'll see you again soon.